welcome to another fabulous episode of the Mindset Michelle TV show. We are so super excited that you're joining us today for yet another incredible guest, another wonderful guest. Hello to today's guest, the lovely Melissa. Hello, Melissa.
Hi, how are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you, and even more excited to have you joining us today. So for those of you that haven't come across Dr. Melissa Bond, she is a lecturer at the University of South Australia, and she lectures in digital technology education, which with all of the conversations about digital technology at the moment, I'm sure people are thinking, well, what does that mean and what does that involve? But she's more than that. She's an amazing, accomplished author and producer of many, many different research papers and worked internationally as well as here in Australia. And as technology is one of those areas that people are fascinated in, and I'm sure women and people with young girls and children are interested in, I'm sure we can get to talk about a little bit later as well. But for now, Melissa, please explain, how did you come to be doing what you're doing, and what is it that you're passionate about in doing it?
Okay, so I grew up in Clare in country South Australia, and I became a high school teacher after I completed my undergraduate university study here in Adelaide. I was predominantly a teacher of German, actually, alongside a whole range of other subjects, including digital technologies. I was a high school teacher for 10 years. Again, in Clare, actually, at the very high school that I grew up in, which was a complete coincidence, actually. Yeah, I was just really, really lucky to get a permanent job straight out of university, and absolutely loved it there. But throughout my role as a teacher and as a coordinator for a few years there as well, I always loved research, and I always had a real passion for I guess investigating and exploring and finding out some of the best ways that, you know, from the wider world that could impact my teaching and influence how I was approaching that connection and that approach to my students. So I ended up doing some postgraduate study. I started off doing a graduate certificate in e-learning, which was actually by correspondence, and I'd already done some correspondence study with a university in New South Wales, doing Russian of all things. And then I ended up doing my master's through Adelaide and ended up absolutely loving that. And I'd always wanted to live in Germany. And I ended up doing my PhD at a university in Germany. So I'm now a lecturer in digital technology education at the University of South Australia. But I'm also, I also have a couple of other roles as well. I'm an EPPI-Reviewer Support and Training Officer with University College London, and I'm now an Adjunct Associate Professor with the University of Stavanger in Norway, which is really exciting as well. So I guess, you know, why I'm so passionate about what I do, I love learning, I love sharing what I've learned with others, and I just want to try and have, you know, as large an impact as I can on as many people as I can, which I think is why I've, you know, instead of having a role as a classroom teacher, I'm now able to teach, you know, upcoming teachers and in-service teachers, and then have them teach their students. So I'm sort of taking it up to that next level. So that's what really excites me about what I do.
Wow, and what a wonderful, wonderful story. And thank you. There's a lot in there that you've managed to share very, very quickly there. And I'm fascinated about this place called Clare that you've so obviously got a great affinity with as a teacher and growing up there. But also the whole German and Russian and all of the adjunct professor positions and other things that you hold now. I really hear within all of that teaching and that sharing of knowledge and that passion you have around the teaching and the sharing of knowledge in a really lovely way. And of course, yes, the digital technology education is such a growth area for everybody. That's very much about your career and your progression within that and the different sort of areas that you've worked in, which is beautiful. So if I was to say to you or ask you then, what does success mean to you? What would you answer with that?
Well, I would have to answer that it depends. I mean, success has meant different things to me at different phases of my life. I'm actually someone who has some chronic medical conditions, and that's something I've dealt with for most of my life. And, you know, at one point when I was really unwell, I have both endometriosis and fibromyalgia. Success for me was being able to get up and have a shower and then walk around the block. Being able to do that was an enormous success. Being able to study whilst I was unwell, and I guess that's one of the reasons I started my distance education studies, was because I couldn't attend university. You know, being able to complete an assignment, being able to complete a whole course, being able to then complete my qualifications, and then become a teacher and successfully work as I have done, that's been success to me at different stages. You know, now that I'm a lecturer here at UniSA, success can mean to me, you know, being acknowledged for the work that I do. Having a PhD student from perhaps another institution or another country contact me and say, hey, guess what? I've published my first article and you were the one that inspired me, or you were the one that helped me with this particular part of the method of this work. And thank you so much. You know, that is success to me. Having someone, you know, try something in their classroom and have it work, or they've tried it and it didn't quite work, but that made them think in a different way. And then they've told me about it. Like, that's success to me as well. And yeah, I think it really does come back to where I have been at different stages of my life and understanding, you know, where I am, and I guess feeling grateful for different ways that I've been able to affect change for others as well as myself. You know.
Wonderful, and I can keep hearing this theme of how, as a teacher and as somebody that likes to train and help others, that's an important part of success for you. But I also do hear within that personal struggle of overcoming some health issues to keep going and to achieve the different things that you wanted to achieve at different times. And you so eloquently and beautifully put it, you know, the getting out of bed, the finishing an assignment. These, you say them quite easily, but I'm sure, and many people with health conditions would relate to the actual struggle in that moment at that time. And so that courage, and I really applaud you with that courage of keeping going. And that's probably a great way to then talk to you about some of the things or suggestions that you might have for people watching around what they can do in their lives, whether it's, you know, I hear the passion you have for helping and teaching others, and it's not necessarily even that they're successful, but that they're just even trying to do things. I also hear how with health issues or other issues, you know, acknowledging them, dealing with them, and keeping going. But those are my interpretations. Melissa or Mel, what sort of tips and suggestions would you give to people watching around how they can create more of a successful mindset in their lives?
I think for both kind of aspects that I've talked about, both from a health perspective and also from the work perspective, I think one of the major things that's been the most impactful for me when it comes to, you know, success is the ability to be able to reach out to others and develop networks of support through, especially for me, through social media. I have found great support and great, what's the word? You know, great connections through being able to put myself out there a little bit more and try and be open to the to being in contact with others and to talking through situations with other people. So, for example, in my career, when I was still teaching, I was coming to the end of my master's, and I just happened to see pop up on. I was looking at this website called ResearchGate, and it's a place where researchers and academics they can put their research papers up there for other people to look at. They can start discussions with people and things like that. Anyway, up popped a job advertisement for a postdoctoral position in digital learning at a university in Germany. And I looked at it and I read it and I thought, oh my gosh, this sounds so much like me and so much like the things that I love to do. And it's exactly what I'd love to do in the future. But I don't have my PhD yet. And I guess if I applied for it, well, there's no hope I'm going to get it. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to email this professor, this person who's published this, who's looking for this position for this person. So I sent him an email. I said, you know, dear Professor Tabaki Richter, that's who it was. He became my supervisor. I said, my name is Mel. You know, this is who I am. I detailed who I was, my experience. I attached my CV. I said, I realized that I'm not currently in a position to apply for this role. You know, I'm not qualified, but I was just wondering whether or not perhaps you had something at a slightly lower level, whether, you know, something might open up in the future if you could keep me in mind. Anyway, he ended up writing back the next day and said, which quite frankly is, now that I know this person, is a bit of a shock because he's a very busy person. So I was flabbergasted that he would respond to me, but he said, oh, you know, thank you so much for reaching out to me and for getting in touch. How about we have a Zoom call? I'd love to hear more about you. I'd love to hear more about what you're interested in. So we ended up having a couple of conversations via Zoom, and he invited me to come over to Germany and attend a conference with him. So I did. I went over in October 2016, checked out the university and went to the conference, met a whole bunch of amazing people, and he ended up offering me a job before I left Germany, before I finished the conference. And 3 months later, I moved to Germany with my 4-year-old daughter and began a position as a research associate with him. And then I did my PhD with him. But if I hadn't have reached out to him, if I hadn't have put myself out there and put myself forward and said, here I am, you know, sort of laid myself bare in a way to open myself up to possible rejection, I wouldn't have had that success. It would not have led to my PhD, and all of these wonderful things that I've been able to do since then just simply wouldn't have happened. So success for me in my work and also in my professional life has meant being open to opportunities, being open and feeling comfortable to contact others and have a go. And I think that's one of the key things that I could share. And there's so many different examples of me doing that, especially in my career, which has led to really fruitful collaborations with other academics. I think that's one of the things that I would, definitely, that I would talk about when it comes to success.
And what a fabulous, fabulous example there. And thank you for sharing such a heartfelt example, Melissa. And I'm sure also when you're actually reaching out, I can almost feel that the fear and the anxiety of, you know, who am I to, the imposter syndrome about who am I to reach out to this senior person, and I don't have the skills and I don't this and I don't that. But I also hear the courage that you actually took those steps, you followed up with those steps. He was polite enough to say, let's have a chat over an online meeting. He then invited you. And so you kept saying yes. That's the other part that I really want to talk about there or reflect on there as well. You kept saying yes to the opportunities that were being offered. So I think that this is really a fabulous example. You talked about reaching out, being open to the opportunities. But as those opportunities arose, you kept saying yes, and you kept leaning. I love this example of leaning into things. So as you kept leaning into it, oh, you know, I don't have the PhD, but would he be open to something a bit lower? I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't even live in Germany. So all of that, you know, what if? And especially for women and possibly also for minority groups as well. there can be a little bit more inhibition about just reaching out if you don't tick all of those boxes. So I think that key tip there about reaching out and just giving it a go, even if you don't tick all the key boxes, because it may lead to, as you said, it led to your research assistant, it led to your PhD, it led to you living in Germany. All of these things that unfolded beautifully because you took that initial step and you just went, I'll go for it. And then even through the different layers of uncomfortableness at different points in time, I'm sure you felt as you went through, keeping saying yes and yes. And then even to reflect on, you know, with a 4-year-old child moving to another country, saying yes to that, you know, what am I going to do about school? What am I going to do about this and that? And all of those elements. Am I going to be able to live on a research assistant wage in Germany?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because I actually started with a 60% position. It wasn't full-time. It was only 0.6. And yeah, that's a really, really good point. I didn't have a lot of money. And it was only really quite lucky that I had a long service leave banked up from my role as a high school teacher, that I was really able to afford it. And it was confronting, because I was working in a city, but I was living in a small town, sort of just on the outskirts, and I didn't have a car. We had to walk or we had to cycle to get places or catch public transport. And I enrolled my daughter in the local kindergarten, German speaking, it wasn't English speaking. She couldn't speak German. Maybe she could count to 20, but apart from that. And it was quite isolating, I suppose, for both of us to begin with. So yeah, it was certainly, the first 6 months at least, very challenging. But after that, it did start getting easier. But yes. It was,
yeah, and you mentioned earlier about reaching out online to support groups and stuff. I'm sure there weren't many Australians with 4-year-olds in that little town that you moved to, or even you know, that the am I crazy? All those thoughts that you would have naturally had of what am I doing on the other side of the planet, to my daughter, to myself, to my career, to my whatever. And one of the key things that I reflected on when reading through your information, Mel, was around that you stick with things. You know, to do a PhD takes a long period of time. And even then you were saying, you know, after 6 months, you know, it got easier, and things do get easier. But I think that this is one of the things, not only reaching out and giving things a go, but you're also reflecting in many ways, giving things a go over a decent period of time, and not going after 2 weeks, oh, I don't have a whole new set of friends and I don't this and I don't that. You actually showed again that you can make things work if you give an understandable, decent amount of time or a period of time to things, because it just takes time to settle into a new job, a new role, a new country, a new this, that. So I think that that's another beautiful way, because when people, you know, in today's world are looking at changing jobs, changing careers, changing this, changing that, they may have more of an expectation that when the grass is greener for the first 6 months, using the 6 months again, it may actually seem like they're in a burnt out bushfire zone rather than a greener grass before it actually kicks in after that 6 months.
Yes, and I've been in that situation too, where you know, I've come into a new role. Even starting here at UniSA, it was, you know, that was a completely different situation as well, because I hadn't taught at an Australian university before. I'd only had experience in Germany and then in England, because I moved to England after I lived in Germany for 3 years. And that was different again, because when I moved to England, I moved 3 weeks before lockdown, before COVID really hit. And so I had about 3 weeks in the London office, where I was commuting every day and having a wonderful London lifestyle. And then I was having to make that shift to, you know, being locked down for 2 years before I moved back here to Australia. So when I came here, I had to again kind of shift that mindset to think, well, you know, in a different space, and it was a lot that I came into in terms of my teaching load, especially at the start of last year. And it was hard for the first 6 months. It was particularly difficult because my daughter was having to make yet another adjustment at school, and that was, you know, having its own impact. But you just need to, I guess I was able to draw on that experience that I've had, and that, I guess, in a way, got a little bit of strength that I have to say, well, you know, we can stick this out. We can draw upon the support networks. We can try and get to know other colleagues here at the university and ask them for assistance. You know, who here has been through a similar situation? Perhaps I can ask them for some advice. I could tap into you know, the advice again of my wider friends in the internet who I'm members of. I've been a member of, for example, different PhD mum groups on Facebook, and just some of the wonderful advice and support that you can get from people you've never met can be incredible. So even here in Australia, I've had the same sort of challenges thrown, but like you said, it's about drawing on that, yes, I can, and leaning into those opportunities that has really, really helped.
And I really love how you were sharing there about, you know, the PhD mums group. I hadn't even thought of that, but that makes a whole lot of sense, because just like you have mumpreneurs and mum this and mum that, whether you're a mum or a dadpreneur or a dad PhD group, you know, having that group of colleagues that have been in a similar situation and to share some of that same journey with, and that I think is where having the internet and being able to find people that have got those common experiences and common backgrounds. One of my favourite ones to use, and for anybody watching whose name is Michelle with one L, I have a Facebook group, and it's a global group of Michelles with one L. So we have women from all over the world, and we connect, and it is really funny because I've never met these people in my life, but they all talk about having to spell their name for their whole life, etc. So it's one of those, and the PhD mums group I'm sure is very similar. Unless you go through those life experiences of having, you know, Michelle with one L, you don't necessarily understand the same sort of things that other people with the same name would have. And I think that you're understanding that reaching out to those groups, similar to when you had the endometriosis and were doing your research papers, etc., all of those different ways, and that's where technology has made it easier to reach out to different people and to build those support networks around you with whatever it is that you're going through in your own life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. So, Melissa, if there was some students, you know, younger people or older people, or even just people looking to do a change in career, obviously going from teaching in a school to teaching in a university, and then working in Germany and England and here in Australia, they're all quite big and significant life changes and steps. What do you think you would say has been one of the key things in terms of your mindset that you've been able to draw on or use to keep going through those significant changes?
That's a really tough question. I think it has been the, as I said, just the willingness to try new things, and the willingness to, I guess, want to seek something better for myself and for my daughter, and knowing that, I guess, you know, change doesn't come easily. Sometimes change doesn't come automatically. You know, if you want to change your situation, you need to do something about it. You need to be proactive. And I think that has been one of the key things that's kept me going, is that you know, I want the best for my daughter, and I want the best for myself. And what are the changes that I can make? What are the steps that I can take in order to get to those places? And I think that's probably what I've drawn upon the most in all of the different changes that I've made. Because even coming here to Adelaide has been hard from a personal perspective. My husband's actually still back home in England. And unfortunately, due to his own health reasons, he hasn't been able to come over here at all at this point. And so we've been, you know, I have travelled back there a couple of times, but we've been apart for all of this time. And it's about knowing that, you know, despite those hardships, that accepting what's going on, and okay, this might not be ideal right now. What changes can we make? What steps can we take to improve those that situation? So.
Wow, you did very well there, and I did realise it was a bit of a
curly question. Yeah.
So congratulations. You were willing to try new things again and answer the hairy question you were asked. I really hear as well that, you know, that willingness to try new things, and that change is not always easy, and I can really hear that level of acceptance, and that there seems to be this beautiful story arch that where those health challenges that you had early on really built some of those skills and that mindset around, well, I'm going to try new things. I'm going to see if doing this in this way or that way helps me to get that research paper finished today. You're going to try new things being in Adelaide while your husband is in the UK. That really, you know, that enjoyment of life that many people in the education space have, because it's that willingness to try new things. It's the willingness to be open to change and to grow and to keep doing things. And even as you've shared, living and working in different countries and looking, I loved how you put looking for the best for yourself and for your daughter, you know, so putting yourself first and trying whatever it will be to bring those things to yourself and your daughter. Mel, there's so much more, and there's so many more tricky questions I could think of. But if people wanted to get hold of you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
I think probably the best way would be to connect with me either via LinkedIn or on Twitter. Otherwise, email is always a great way to contact me through the university. But I will just say that you're absolutely right that my illness and my health conditions have shaped a lot of my attitude towards life, and having to sometimes completely stop what I'm doing due to ill health and take a step back, having to stop work, having to stop study, accepting where I'm at in life, and then restart again. That's happened a few times, and I think that has had a profound effect on me.
Wow, and I the way that I really hear that coming through is that you've got that acceptance that, okay, it took 6 months before, you know, I settled into Germany. It took 6 months before I settled into Adelaide, UniSA, and that patience that perhaps, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I was bringing it up, that patience and understanding that there's, I love that thing about seasons and times. So if there was an issue to do with your health, needing to put that first and coming back to the studies later, then there's a season and a time to your health. So just quickly then, Mel, another bit of a hairy question for you, but around if there was some advice that you might give to your younger self, what would that advice be?
My advice would be to always keep learning, to follow your gut and trust your instincts, and that perhaps a gap year after high school wouldn't be a bad thing to consider. would probably be my advice if it was to my younger self.
Wow, I love that. Taking a gap year, listening to yourself, listening to your intuition, and really, you know, being more present. I hear about that, being more present, which many people keep saying to their younger selves. And the lovely surprise I have for people at this point in the show is that tomorrow when you're watching the show, you will be watching your younger self. So
that's a very good point.
So thank you so much, Mel. It's been a real hoot having you on the show today, and really lovely to be chatting with a teacher who is willing to give everything a go and really reflects that reaching out and what anybody can achieve and do in their life if they just take those steps. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been lovely.
Wonderful. And to all of the viewers out there, thank you again for watching and for being a part of this magical journey. And I hope you've enjoyed as much as I have these wonderful walks into what you too can do to create more success in your mindset. But for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.